Hello, my name is Maxim. For those of you new here, this year I've decided to pivot my career and embarked on a journey to learn iOS development from scratch with no prior development experience. I give myself 1 year and budget of 20k. 1 year to develop an application, release it to the App Store, and hopefully make a living out of it. Will I succeed? Will I fail? Subscribe and join me to find out. And now to today's video. Hello, and welcome to the weekly review episode. It was an eventful week. As usual, in this video I will be discussing multiple topics. As of today, I am on day 42 of 100 Days of SwiftUI course. Initially, I plan to split my week into two parts. First 3 days, working through the course. Last 2 days, working on my own app, specifically looking into data persistence and Swift data. But while looking through the table of contents of 100 Days of SwiftUI, I figured that Paul will be talking about Swift data in just a few projects, or 10 days or so. So I decided to wait a bit and not jump ahead of the train. I still made some progress on the app though, which I will be discussing in the related section of the video. Let's start with Swift concepts I learned this week. A lot of it was about animations and how good Swift at interpolating movement between two states, with no additional work from developers' end. Reminded me a lot about video editing actually, where software would approximate movement between two shots of the video. Same idea, but with more control if needed. Implicit animations trigger automatically and do not require much additional code. You can layer animations to come up with interesting complex animations, although to get something good rather than odd looking would require experience. Currently, I wouldn't even try to approach that. I feel like I'm still struggling with more basic concepts like data flow. Animations can have timings, delays and easing. Again, very similar to video editing. With animation, allows to explicitly specify reaction to certain events. And random bunch of concepts. Gesture recognition allows the app to respond to user interactions, such as taps and swipes, making the UI interactive and responsive to user actions. While I do see the benefit of this to make interface more touchy-feely, I feel like it's too advanced of a concept for me right now, and I will be coming back to that at a later point. Codable protocol is responsible for serialization and deserialization of data. I'm looking forward to see more how Swift works with APIs and JSON data. I worked with APIs extensively, both being QA and in Power BI. And finally, some topic related to data persistence. UserDefaults allows to store small amounts of data, like settings. This one I used already in my own app, exactly for that, to store settings. This one is ugly. I know, don't judge book by its cover. It was all about the functionality. The app is simple multiplication table game for kids, allowing you to choose the range and amount of questions. This app has two screens, and therefore I had to implement state tracking, done using state variable, as a lot of things in SwiftUI. Once game starts, function flips it to true, and there are two separate views conditioned to that variable. Unrelated to this, my view was crashing a lot without giving any error messages. By looking into the crash log, I narrowed it down to generate questions function and later to multiply with. The crashes were happening due to range generation. Whenever range would be from 2 to 2, the view would crash, as it's incorrect range. Therefore, I came up with this. In case randomizer generates 2, it will automatically up it to 3, making range correct. Otherwise, as I mentioned, the view was crashing a lot. I'm not sure if there is a better way to handle this, but if there is, feel free to share it in the comments. I also did few updates related to guess the flag. Once the user taps the flag, with animation kicks in and does rotation against y-axis, and scales down and makes transparent the other two flags. I struggled a bit with conditional application of modifiers, but otherwise it went smoothly. That's quite common right now. I'm often unsure what is possible and isn't when it comes to conditionals. Moving on to iExpense. This one was full of lessons. First of all, I learned how to filter lists, and you can see this approach here. Second, reiterate how to store data with your user defaults using JSON. You can see that here. And third, which took me hours, how to correctly delete items from the list. As you can see here, it is split into subcategories: personal costs and cakes. At first, whenever I would try to delete an item from business costs, for example, it would delete random item, sometimes the one I wanted, sometimes something else, all due to incorrect index of the elements. Instead of using index from the initial array, it would use local index. To be completely honest, in the end I did not solve this one myself and had to search through the forums to find a solution. Data flow and iterating through the arrays is something I do not fully grasp right now. It's way different from the way SQL works. Moonshot is the last one I worked with this week. The complexity of the apps in the course is gradually growing, and this one has multiple views, with data flowing from view to view. I wanted Query View to use real data from JSON rather than hard-coded one, but once again struggled to join data together. I hope at some point my brain will switch its gears. And again, what I struggle the most here is data flow. I'm used to working with databases, tables, rows, joining data from multiple tables using foreign keys. In programming though, it's done using completely foreign concepts to me. Pun intended. Let's move on to the budget review. Biggest expenses this month are behind me, and my burn slowed down somewhat. As you can see, I'm still below the baseline, but getting closer. Next week, unless something unexpected happens, I should break even and align with the baseline. Next month will be crucial in terms of budget tracking. By the end of February, it will be visible whether I've done my budgeting right or made some mistakes, and therefore will have less time for this whole adventure. I will be closely monitoring how it goes. Let's move on to my own app and discuss the progress I made since last week. Originally, I was planning to look into data persistence and figure out how to store user data using SwiftData, new Apple framework released in iOS 17. But turned out it's soon coming in 100 days of SwiftUI, so I decided to wait a bit. Meanwhile, I wanted to try to implement settings UI and store those settings using UserDefaults, which I did. Let's have a look. Here is the settings screen that I made. Currently, it's just a front that doesn't have any functionality attached to that. It will come, in time, as I learn. As you can see from the code, I started using this notation to see a bit easier closing brackets and their element. It's easy to get lost in all that nesting. For user settings implementation, at first I tried Paul's approach. You can see it commented out down here. But turned out all of that isn't needed, and I could have simply used app-stored sugar syntax, which handles all of those steps automatically. Two extra things that I did added enum for all the settings I wanted to store. And rather than use strings for keys, I did an extension to app storage to refer to my predefined keys. I see how using string keys is prone to errors for bigger apps, although in my case it's probably overthinking and isn't really needed. And that's all the progress I made this week. It might not look like much, but mind you, I'm just third week into learning programming. Next week, I'm planning to double down on 100 days of SwiftUI to arrive to Swift data as soon as possible and hopefully start planning data model for my own app. You will be the first to know. See you next week.